Have you ever woken up one morning and felt that the life you've been living no longer fits? The job that once gave you pride now feels hollow. The conversations that used to excite you suddenly sound shallow. Even the victories you once chased, money, recognition, comfort, don't touch you the way they used to. At first, it can feel terrifying. You wonder, am I broken? Am I losing my mind? Popular blogs and YouTube videos call this a spiritual awakening. They'll tell you it's about synchronicities, vivid dreams, or waves of strange emotions that make you feel both lighter and lost at the same time. But here's the paradox. In the Buddhist tradition, these are not signs that you've reached enlightenment. They're just the beginning. They're not the finish line, but the first stirring of something deeper. It's the moment the mind realizes that chasing comfort, chasing control, or chasing certainty no longer works. Buddhism calls this the ground of awakening. It begins when we confront the first noble truth. Life includes suffering, dissatisfaction, and impermanence. And far from being a failure, that discomfort is a courageous doorway. It's the mind's way of saying, look closer, there's more to see. So today, let's explore awakening not as a mystical event, but as a living path, a path of wisdom, compassion, and deliberate practice. If awakening isn't just about strange dreams or flashes of intuition, then what is it really? This is where the Buddhist perspective completely shifts the conversation. In today's spiritual culture, awakening is often painted as a lightning bolt, one dramatic moment when everything changes. But in Buddhism, awakening is not a sudden miracle. It's a process, a path, a lifelong cultivation. It's not something that happens to you out of nowhere. It's something you train in, step by step, with clarity and intention. The journey begins with something uncomfortable, the recognition of suffering. In Buddhist language, this is dukkha, the sense that no matter how much we achieve, no matter how much we grasp for comfort, something always slips through our fingers. Maybe it's the heartbreak of losing someone you love. Maybe it's that restless feeling that even when you get the job, the house, the car, your mind is already looking for the next thing. That unease, that dissatisfaction is not a flaw. It's the doorway. Buddhism calls this the first noble truth. Far from being pessimistic, it's deeply liberating, because when you finally stop pretending everything is fine, you can start asking the real questions. Who am I, really? What is this life for? And that inquiry is the spark of awakening. It's not a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. The Buddhist path calls this yatha bhuta, seeing reality as it truly is. Instead of chasing endless distractions, you begin to notice the truth of impermanence, of interconnection, of the way everything arises and passes away. But here's the crucial difference. In Buddhism, awakening isn't just about feeling better. It's not about chasing mystical highs. It's about cultivating wisdom and compassion, deliberately, with practice. That's why great teachers like Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche describe awakening as a journey of training, a training of the heart and mind. You don't walk it alone. You walk it with guidance, with community, and with discipline. So if awakening is a path, not just a moment, what does that path actually look like? Buddhism gives us a clear map, known as the 7 factors of awakening, 7 qualities of mind that transform those raw, confusing experiences into real growth. So if awakening is not a lightning strike but a path, what does that path look like in daily life? Buddhism offers us a clear and time-tested framework called the 7 factors of awakening. Think of them as 7 inner muscles that we strengthen through practice. And just like in the gym, each one has a role. Some give energy, some bring calm, some create balance. Together, they shape a mind that can hold both the beauty and the difficulty of life without being thrown off course. The first factor is mindfulness, sati. This is the anchor. Without mindfulness, the mind drifts into the past or races into the future, leaving us lost in thought. With mindfulness, we come back to what is real, right here, right now. As Thich Nhat Hanh says, the present moment is the only moment available to us. Imagine standing in line at the grocery store. Instead of scrolling your phone anxiously, you notice your breath, the hum of voices, the weight of your feet on the floor. Suddenly, ordinary life becomes vivid, even sacred. The second factor is investigation of reality, Dhammavicaya. It is not just asking deep questions, but actively looking into the nature of things. Why do I suffer when I don't get what I want? Why does joy fade even after a success? Investigation keeps the mind sharp. It prevents us from slipping into blind faith or spiritual laziness. It's like turning a flashlight inward, searching for truth in every corner of our experience. The third is energy, virya. Awakening is not for the faint of heart. There are days when the mind feels heavy, when we'd rather scroll endlessly or binge watch shows than sit with ourselves. Energy is the courageous determination that keeps us on the cushion, keeps us honest, keeps us moving forward. The Buddha called it heroic effort, and it's exactly that, the quiet heroism of not giving up. The fourth factor is joy, piti. Joy is not about chasing pleasure. It is the natural gladness that arises when the mind becomes steady and clear. It's that moment when you sit under a tree, notice the wind, and feel a smile spread for no reason. Joy is fuel for the journey. It keeps the practice from becoming dry or mechanical. Then comes relaxation, passaddhi. This is the body's exhale, the mind softening. Without it, awakening would be nothing but strain. Imagine unclenching your fists after years of holding on tight. That release is passaddhi. It's the antidote to restlessness and worry, reminding us that peace is found not in control, but in letting go. The sixth factor is concentration, samadhi. This is the ability to hold the mind steady, like a candle flame in a windless room. In a world of constant distraction, concentration is revolutionary. It gives us the power to see deeply into the heart of things because our attention is no longer scattered. And finally, there is equanimity, upekkha. This is the crown jewel, the capacity to meet reality exactly as it is, without grasping for what we like or pushing away what we don't. Equanimity is not coldness. It is warmth without attachment, balance without indifference. It's what allows us to face life's storms without being capsized. These 7 factors are not abstract ideals. They are practical, trainable qualities. They transform awakening from a confusing series of symptoms into a guided path. And once we understand this framework, we can revisit the popular 12 signs of awakening with new clarity. Instead of treating them as random or mystical, we can see them as expressions of these deeper qualities, markers that we are already walking the path. With this framework in place, we can now return to the 12 popular signs of awakening, the ones you often see on blogs or hear in conversations. But instead of treating them as random symptoms or mystical quirks, let's reinterpret each of them through the lens of Buddhist wisdom. They are not accidents. They are natural expressions of the deeper transformation that happens when wisdom and compassion begin to grow. The first sign is that feeling of being lost, the deep questioning of purpose. Maybe what once felt meaningful now feels empty, and you're left asking, who am I? What's the point of this? Popular culture may frame this as a breakdown, but in Buddhism, this is the opening of Dhamma Vicaya, the investigation of truth. It's the mind awakening to the first noble truth, that life contains suffering, and realizing that the old answers are no longer enough. This is not a crisis, it's courage. The second sign is losing interest in material things. Perhaps the latest gadgets or status symbols no longer excite you. Instead of running after the next purchase, you begin to feel content with less. This is the growth of non-attachment. The Dalai Lama often reminds us that true happiness doesn't come from wealth or fame, but from a good heart. In this shift, the ego's hunger begins to loosen, and the soul discovers liberation in letting go. The third sign is heightened sensitivity and empathy. Suddenly, you notice other people's suffering more vividly. A stranger's sadness might feel heavy in your own chest. This can be overwhelming, but it's also the blossoming of karuna, compassion. The open heart naturally resonates with others' pain, not out of weakness, but out of connection. And with that sensitivity comes less judgment, because you begin to see not just behavior, but the wounds beneath it. The fourth sign is the strange mixture of joy and sadness. On one hand, you may feel a raw grief when you see the world suffering. On the other, you may be moved to tears by the beauty of a bird's song or a child's laughter. This isn't instability, it's clarity. The sadness comes from seeing suffering clearly, while the joy is the piti that arises when the mind rests in presence. It's the discovery that joy doesn't depend on external conditions. The fifth sign is the urge to simplify and purge. Closets get cleaned, old habits dropped, distractions cut away. On the surface, it looks like minimalism, but underneath it is the practice of non-attachment, Letting go of what no longer serves creates inner and outer space for tranquility, passaddhi, and concentration, samadhi. The sixth sign is craving solitude and silence. Parties, small talk, background noise, they no longer appeal the way they once did. Instead, you crave quiet, where you can hear your own mind. Far from being antisocial, this is the natural turning inward required to cultivate samadhi. Even the Dalai Lama, surrounded by constant requests, dedicates hours each day to solitude, knowing that silence is the ground for clarity. The seventh sign is the dissolution of dualistic thinking. Life stops looking like simple black and white, good and bad. You start to see connections, paradoxes, the way suffering can lead to growth, or how an obstacle can become a teacher. This is an insight into interdependence and the beginning of no self. The rigid borders of me and them soften, and tolerance takes the place of judgment. The eighth sign is increased intuition and synchronicities. Perhaps you notice meaningful coincidences, or your dreams feel more vivid. From a Buddhist lens, this is not a magical power, but a natural result of a mind that is less distracted and more present. When you're not lost in noise, you perceive subtle patterns. Life feels more responsive, more interactive, because you're finally paying attention. The ninth sign is changes in relationships and communication. You may feel misunderstood by family or friends, or find that superficial conversations drain you. This can feel lonely, but it's also the development of discernment. As your clarity sharpens, it becomes harder to tolerate inauthenticity. This is why the Buddha emphasized Sangha, community, because awakening often shifts the ground of your relationships. The 10th sign is the emergence of inner peace. Suddenly, the rush to achieve, to perform, to constantly do begins to fade. You can sit, breathe, and feel whole without needing anything extra. This peace arises directly from cultivating passaddhi and samadhi. It is calm abiding, the nourishment that comes from stillness, described by teachers like Mingyur Rinpoche as the very heart of practice. The 11th sign is embracing challenges as opportunities. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to ask, "What can this teach me?" This is wisdom joined with equanimity, upekkha. It is the strength to face adversity without bitterness, the ability to see that life unfolds for us, not against us. And finally, the 12th sign is perhaps the most important, the strong desire to alleviate the suffering of others. This is the flowering of bodhicitta, the awakened heart. It is the turning point when awakening stops being about your personal peace and becomes about the liberation of all beings. This is the bodhisattva vow, to walk not just for yourself, but for everyone. The Dalai Lama calls this the religion of human kindness, and Thich Nhat Hanh speaks of it as collective awakening. In both cases, the message is clear. True awakening is never selfish. It is always shared. And so these 12 signs, far from being random, are guideposts, reminders that the seeds of wisdom and compassion are already alive within us. So if these 12 signs are guideposts, the real question becomes, how do we live them? How do we turn fleeting glimpses into steady qualities of mind? Buddhism is very clear on this. The signs are like warning lights on a dashboard. They tell us that something is stirring inside. But the engine that carries us forward is daily practice, rooted in the 7 factors of awakening. This is where awakening shifts from a mystical idea to something practical and embodied. Take mindfulness, for example. Instead of treating it as a buzzword, you can turn it into a ritual. Before opening a door, pause for 3 breaths. Before eating, notice the colors and textures of your food. Small acts repeated daily build the muscle of presence. Or consider investigation. Instead of drowning in frustration when life throws a challenge, you can journal about it, asking, what's the root of this? What does my reaction reveal? In this way, your confusion becomes your teacher. Energy, too, is not about endless hustle. It's about consistency. Even 5 minutes of meditation, practiced every day without excuse, builds resilience. Joy can be cultivated by simply pausing to notice a leaf dancing in the wind or a child's laugh. Relaxation might come from a body scan before bed, letting each muscle unclench. Concentration can be trained while walking by focusing only on the rhythm of your steps. And equanimity grows when we note experiences as pleasant or unpleasant without clinging or rejecting. This balancing act is the heart of practice. When the mind is sluggish, we emphasize investigation, energy, and joy. When the mind is restless, we emphasize relaxation, concentration, and equanimity. It's a dynamic living art, not a rigid formula. But there's another piece we cannot ignore: community. Awakening can feel isolating, especially when old relationships no longer resonate. That's why Buddhism emphasizes Sangha, a spiritual community. Thich Nhat Hanh's Plum Village tradition shows how collective practice transforms suffering into joy, while Mingyur Rinpoche's Tergar community connects meditators across the globe. These are not just support groups, they are lifelines, reminding us that we are not alone on the path. Because awakening, while personal, is never private. And this leads us to the deepest truth of all, the vow of the Bodhisattva. Awakening is not about polishing your own enlightenment trophy. It's about realizing that your freedom is tied to everyone else's freedom. The sensitivity and compassion you feel naturally blossom into a desire to serve. This is bodhicitta, the awakened heart. It's the moment when you stop asking, "How can I be free?" and start asking, "How can I help?" The Dalai Lama calls this the religion of human kindness. Thich Nhat Hanh calls it collective awakening. Both point to the same truth. The journey doesn't end in solitude, it ends in service. Awakening, then, is not a destination you arrive at once and for all. It's not measured by how many synchronicities you notice or how many mystical experiences you collect. It is measured by the depth of wisdom and compassion that flower in your daily life. These 12 signs are not a checklist to finish. They are invitations, guideposts reminding you that your mind is ready to move from unconscious reaction to conscious cultivation. The Buddhist path shows us that awakening is not passive. It is a continuous unfolding. It is the courage to face suffering without denial, the discipline to cultivate the 7 factors, and the generosity to extend your awakening outward for the benefit of others. And perhaps that is the most radical truth of all. The path of awakening is not about escaping the world, but about serving it with a heart that is free and fearless. So I invite you now, pause for a moment and reflect. Which of these 12 signs are alive in your life right now? And how might you nurture them into steady qualities of mind and heart? Share your reflections, your struggles, or your insights in the comments. Because awakening, while deeply personal, is also profoundly collective. When we share the journey, we make the path brighter for everyone.